If you want to build a lasting and self-sufficient business, which I know you do, then you need to have a strong brand. As you're building a brand from scratch, it's so important to be intentional and strategic about this from the get-go so that you can be as successful as possible. Your brand is not just your logo, it's not just your typography, it's not just your colors, it's so much more than that. It's essentially what people think of when they hear your brand name, when they see your logo, when they think about your business. I like to think of it as the personification of your business. So if your business was a person, how would they act? What would their values be? How would they speak? What would they look like? What would they wear? All those things encompassed are your brand. If you think about the last thing you bought, brand likely played a role in it. Yes, the product or the service likely drew you in, but there might be a slew of other products or services that could potentially get the same result. And the reason why you bought that particular product or service is likely because the brand had something to do with it. Maybe you trusted it, maybe it was credible, maybe you thought like your values aligned with their values, maybe you felt like it was an aspirational brand and it's something you aspire to be, whatever it is. Brand plays a role. Branding is not fluffy. It's not just fonts and colors and all that stuff that makes your business pretty, but it can be a differentiating factor because like I talked about, there are so many products and so many services out there nowadays. And people can copy you, right? But in order to stand out, you do need to build a strong brand. Building a strong brand happens with intentionality and over time. Because a brand is not built overnight, you do need to set it up and have your brand guidelines and all this stuff and figure out your brand as a person, like who they are, how they talk, and all this stuff. But once you set it up, your job is not done. You need to continue to act in accordance to your brand and be on brand because a brand is built over time and over consistency. And so as an example, back when I was heavily building up Recloseted's brand, I would make sure that everything we did was on brand and would adhere to our brand guidelines. As an example, for our Recloseted Radio podcast, if Shein approached us to do sponsor ad reads, I would probably decline because their values and our values at Recloseted are very different. And it would actually harm my brand if I were to partner with such a big fast fashion company. You need to realize that branding is something that you set up, but it is also something you need to continuously adhere to and really stick to over time to build that brand. And so leverage the Notion workbook down below to start to figure out your brand and what you want it to look like. Like I said, what do you want your brand values to be? What do you want your brand to stand for? When people hear your brand, what do you want them to think about? What do you want it to be associated with? Start to set those intentions and realize that your branding or your brand is a visual representation of those intentions. You can hire a branding agency from the get-go, but unless you are so sure of what you're building and you have a lot of money, I would actually advise you to DIY it to begin with. And if any of my brand or designer friends are listening to this, I am so sorry, but this is just my hot take and my opinion, but hear me out, okay? I'm saying that for your first year, as you're still experimenting and figuring it out, I think you can likely set the intention, figure out your values, figure out your tone of voice, figure out how you want to show up. And then you can put together some colors that you think would represent that. You can put together a mood board. You can pick some fonts that you think would represent your brand. And maybe just do it all on Canva to begin with. And then once you've figured everything out, you have some more budget, you can then hire a branding agency to help you bring it to life. So I'm not saying you should never do that. I'm just saying to begin with, maybe to prevent rework and prevent you from wasting some of your money, you can DIY it as you're figuring it out. And then as you get bigger, you can definitely hire experts. So my branding design friends, I hope I have not insulted you, but that's just what I think. Do you think that you need to get quiet and figure out your intention with your brand first? You can leverage the Notion workbook down below to do that. Make sure you set up everything with your brand. It is important to think about it intentionally because your brand is important. It's not just fluffy stuff. It's not just aesthetics. It really is the personification of your business and what will stand you apart in the long run. So you do need to be very strategic about it and think deeply about what's going to set your business apart from other businesses and then what the visual representation can look like. And so leverage the Notion workbook down below to help you figure all that out. In terms of my email, I'm going to send you some brands that I think are killing it in terms of their branding and or how they personify themselves and present themselves. And hopefully that sparks some inspiration. I don't want you to copy them because obviously that's not what we're doing, but just use that as inspiration and to show you what's possible. Great job. And once you've completed all these action items, I will see you in the next lesson.